Hello, welcome back to VLGA Connect. Good to have you with us for our regular podcast and YouTube show sponsored by Hunt and Hunt Lawyers. We catch up with local leaders and decision makers from around the Victorian local government sector, and we bring you some of the latest news from the sector as well, so you can keep your finger on the pulse. Coming up on today's show, I'm going to meet up with Councillor Helen Davidson, who's the Mayor of Merri-bek City Council. We'll talk about priorities and challenges for that inner city municipality as her mayoral term is fast drawing towards a close. And then we'll head out to Golden Plains Shire Council to meet the new CEO there. Adam McSwain has been in the role for just a few weeks. We'll talk about his career journey to this point and about his approach to the new role as that council comes out of a period of some instability. That's all ahead on VLGA Connect today. But let's catch up on some of the latest Connect news headlines now. Well, a funding dispute between Lifesaving Victoria and local councils is intensifying, according to media reports this week. After concerns were raised by Bass Coast Shire in recent weeks, Hobsons Bay Council now says it will not pay an $88,000 bill for lifeguard services at Altona and Williamstown beaches. Frankston Council said it would pay its bill under protest about cost shifting, while Port Phillip and Kingston councils say they're opposed to picking up the costs. A new survey from IBAC has revealed alarming perceptions among Victoria's elected officials. The majority of state MPs and local councillors believe corruption is a significant problem in Victoria, with more than half saying it exists among elected officials. Nearly 90% of responding MPs and over half of councillors consider their own organisations vulnerable to corruption. Hepburn Shire Council is hailing a significant victory for community activism, with news that the Endeavour Group's plans to open a Dan Murphy's liquor outlet in Daylesford have been permanently shelved after a 2-year battle. On Monday, VCAT upheld an earlier decision by the Victorian Liquor Commission to refuse the retail giant a licence to operate in the town, a decision Mayor Don Henderson called a win for Daylesford, the community, the Shire and for the council. The VLGA and the Victorian Government have launched a new award program honouring women in local government. Named after Victoria's first female councillor, the Mary Rogers Awards will recognise outstanding women leaders across 3 categories: an award for current women councillors, an emerging leader award for first-term councillors, and a champion award for councils promoting gender equality. You can find out more about the award program on the VLGA website. Greater Geelong Council has decided against implementing additional tree protection controls on private land, opting instead to focus on community education through its refreshed urban forestry strategy. That decision comes after extensive public consultation, where 67.3% of respondents supported stronger tree protection measures. At Central Goldfields Shire Council, there's a new general local law replacing the 10-year-old regulations with several key changes. A blanket ban on dogs in retail areas has been lifted. Shopping trolleys are now under stricter control. The updated law also addresses community concerns about building site cleanliness, nature strip plantings and dilapidated buildings. Wyndham City Council's Love Your Local campaign launched last year to promote local businesses and encourage residents to buy locally, has received Main Street Australia's National Award for the Best Council Traditional or Digital Marketing campaign. The campaign highlights the faces behind local businesses and aims to strengthen the local economy by keeping money circulating within the community. And we note the passing of long-time councillor and former mayor of Geelong, Jim Fidge, who served as a councillor in the late 70s and as mayor between 1987 and 1989. He was 84. Vale Jim Fidge. Now, before we roll on our interview with Councillor Helen Davidson at Merri-bek, I need to point out this was recorded about 10 days ago, and it was before the council's CEO, Cathy Henderson, announced that she was departing Merri-bek Council to take up the CEO position at WorkSafe Victoria. And that's why, if you're wondering if I don't ask Helen about it, it's because at the time we didn't know that that was coming. But let's have a look now at my chat with Councillor Helen Davidson, the Mayor of Merri-bek City Council. My next guest on VLGA Connect is the second-term Mayor of Merri-bek City Council, Councillor Helen Davidson, but a first-time visitor to VLGA Connect. Helen, hello and welcome.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you here. I was not so much surprised to hear that you're in a second term as mayor, but I didn't realise you'd been on council as long as you have, back to 2012. You must have been about 12 when you ran for council the first time, were you?
No, not at all. I was 26 at the time. So I just love where I live. And I
Yeah.
love the work that council does. And I think having the benefit to be on uh, a few terms is really good to be able to see the work that you put in come to fruition. Because often sometimes things take a few years, infrastructure takes a while to build and take shape. So I'm fortunate enough to have seen libraries being built, swimming pools being built, communities change, and it's just such a rewarding experience.
Well, that is one of the things, I guess, about being on a council for a few terms. You do
Mm.
get to see things come to fruition that often take many, many years to happen. But even at 26, Helen, if I might say, that's on the younger side of what we, particularly back in 2012, were seeing. What was driving you to put your hand up for council at the time?
Yeah, I think I had started working as a lawyer for Victoria Legal Aid, and I really valued the community aspect of work that an organisation like Legal Aid did. And my view was that I would be able to assist a broader range of people from the community that I had grown up in and that I had
Right.
loved. So I grew up in Glenroy. My mum and I still live there. So my mum's down the road from me. And I wanted to be able to give back to a place that had given me so much in terms of services, wonderful libraries, fantastic swimming pools, beautiful parks. Just really those core things that council can perfect and do very well in.
And did you have an expectation? Was that the first time you ran? And did you have an
Yes, it was.
expectation of getting in first time?
Well, I was quite surprised that I was successful, and I had booked myself a sort of condolence trip to Thailand.
Oh, really?
And I was on the plane going there, and it stopped in Singapore, and my mum was frantically sending me emails saying, "You've gotten in and you'll need to come back for the ceremony to be admitted back
Uh,
into council."
yeah.
So I had to get a flight and come back.
Oh, you actually cancelled your trip because they would have waited for you, I'm sure.
Oh, I don't know. I felt like I had to return, so I turned around and came home.
Such is the commitment to the role, obviously. So you're in your fourth term now. What do you
Yeah.
look back on as what's perhaps changed, other than the name of the council, of course, in the
Hmm.
time that you've been on the council?
I think we've seen demographics change a lot. We've seen the influx of um, townhouses and new residents residing in suburbs that were perhaps a bit more traditional with bigger backyards, particularly in the north of the municipality, which is where I'm from,
Hmm.
and the densification as well. So yeah, a fair bit has changed on council, and change requires council to adapt. And I think one of the things that we've done really well is look at where we need to have greater open space with our densification. So, one of the things that council implemented was our parks close to home policy. And that I think is a piece of work that I'm particularly proud of, where we say within 500 metres from a neighbourhood residential area, you must have a pocket of green space. So we identified areas that were lacking that and actively put aside money from the developer contributions to purchase green space so that people could have the backyards that aren't there in a lot of
Yeah.
areas.
And did I read just recently you're actually making some changes in that space with developer contributions to be able to put more funds towards open space projects?
Yes, we have put forward a submission for that, so we're waiting for that to come back.
Right. So, another thing that perhaps has shifted a bit over time is the influence of political ideologies on councils. And I know you're independent, but is that an area that you've seen shift over time as well?
It is. I think it's interesting because on council, it's a balancing act with everything. And as the closest level of government to the people, that's something that you really need to take into account when you're in the chamber as well. as an independent, that's probably a easier role for me to
Mm.
have. But when you're from a political party and you are elected into that position, there is an expectation about how you vote and the arguments that you put up to support
Mm.
your motions or the officers' reports.
Have you found it a hindrance at times to be not aligned politically when we have? I know you've just been to Canberra, for example, on some advocacy. You're talking about advocacy for the state election next year. And, we've got Labor governments in power at the moment. Does it help or hinder that you're not politically aligned?
I find it to be of great benefit, to be honest. I
Yeah.
think I'm sure that other mayors who come from different political parties do justice to the role when advocating, because at the end of the day, you do have your community at the heart of what you're trying to achieve. But being an independent, I think, has really led to being able to have open and honest discussions without sort of the concern that maybe someone's approaching it from a political strategic objective.
Yeah.
I've found it to be really beneficial.
So let's talk about that trip to Canberra, and we'll come back
Mm.
to the state election shortly because I know you're doing a lot of work there already at your council too. But you've been to Canberra with some other mayors. How did that advocacy trip go from your perspective?
Yeah, so I'm the chair of the Northern Council Alliance, and there are 7 councils that form part of this advocacy group. And we sit with our CEOs and the various mayors. Um, Brilliant group of people with really common issues. And one of the advocacy pieces that we approached Parliament with in Canberra was the upfield rail line. The upfield rail line for Merri-bek is one of our central rail corridors,
Yep.
and the service is often infrequent and unreliable, coming every 20 minutes. It's one of the worst services in Melbourne. And then we have the councils that extend further to the north, who are reliant on a V line train from that upfield rail line through to, say, Hume, Mitchell, Whittlesea.
Mm.
And we're asking for that V line train to be electrified to allow more people to come from those growing northern suburbs through to places where they might work. They need to go to hospital appointments, to visit friends, to attend uni. I think the duplication and electrification of the upfield rail line is a critical point for us and for the state government and for the federal government to also lend their advocacy to support, given the growth in those areas and the densification that is coming with the activity centres mandated by the state government and that growth that the state government wants to see.
Yes, I've had some involvement with the Northern Council's advocacy agenda over the years. That upfield line issue has been there for some years now. I guess, how much positivity do you have that there's going to be some sort of concrete solution for that sooner rather than later?
Mm. Well, we've got a business case that's coming, and we know that that's coming in later this year, possibly around December. So that's going to be so formative for that strong advocacy moving forward. Um, I think it's not about saying it's one or the other. It's about saying there is this need here, and to have this densification, we're going to need to update that line now,
Yeah.
not in the future.
It's the age-old thing, isn't it? The growth comes before the infrastructure, and it's seen in so many other ways. I notice on
Mm.
your list of issues is bus network improvements. As we record this, Helen, I see the state's made an announcement about some bus service improvements in the northern suburbs. I'm not sure if you're across it. I don't think any of those affect your area. What are you hoping to see there?
Well, I know that that came through this morning, and I was actually with the Northern Council group this morning. So there were some very pleased mayors in the room to see that come through. And that's really important. And it forms part of that puzzle piece to helping connect individuals to businesses, to friends, to jobs, to health. It
Yeah.
forms part of that puzzle.
Yes. So, from a Merri-bek perspective, though, you obviously want to see more or different solutions, and what would they look like?
In terms of the bus
Yes.
services, yeah, I'll have to have a closer look at the media release that came through. I know that we have some bus services in Merri-bek that are really good, but those connections between north and south, east to west,
Yes.
need to be more frequent to transport people, where you aren't able to rely on, say, the upfield line.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So that's going to be a key one, obviously, as we head down towards the state election next year. What else? As you said to me before we recorded, you can have this big long list, but realistically, you know, you're not going to get everything you're wanting. What is it that you'd like to look back on your mayoral term and say that was really the time that we achieved this, or went a long way towards doing so?
I think the advocacy piece around the upfield line has been really huge for us.
That's the big one.
And
Mm.
yeah, that has to be the big one, but also the advocacy around improving road safety has been quite at the forefront of this council's mind and at my mind. We have two roads that run through Merri-bek, which are state-owned roads, that have had 3 fatalities just in this year alone. So improvements to those roads are crucial, and the state government has responded quite quickly to one of them by lowering the speed limit. But you've also got to have those other mitigation works where you're able to alter the structure of the road in some form, some engineering form, that is going to produce safer outcomes for people walking, cycling, and driving. We know that the most vulnerable people are pedestrians, cyclists, and locals. So people that live locally, that use those roads to cross to get home, to go to their local shops. They're the vulnerable groups that need to be protected. So our
Mm.
advocacy to the state government for these particular roads is very strong. Murray Road, Moreland Road, Nicholson Road.
Okay, so yeah, I noticed quite a list of issues at your last council meeting that were adopted as state election priorities, and no doubt there will be opportunity to talk more about those in the little over 12 months ahead. Councillor Davidson, I did want to just ask you too. I noticed recently your council had a debate about an international issue, the Israel-Palestine-Gaza issue. I don't want to get into the specifics of that, but I do want to ask you your perspective on international issues being dealt with at local government level, and the criticism that often comes that it's not actually the core business for councils. How do you respond to that?
I think that is a really good question, and it's a topical question at the moment. I think the bottom line is that we are all human, and we can all feel compassion and empathy towards the horrendous situations that are tearing people across the world apart, and also the impact that it has on our local communities. We can all empathise with that. I think that there are different perspectives, and we voiced those in the chamber when it came to international affairs. And some councillors feel very strongly that that is their role, to advocate on behalf of communities that have come to them with concerns about what's happening internationally. My personal view is that those matters are federal matters, and international policy is a federal policy. And our role at council is to support residents locally with infrastructure services, and international matters should be left at that federal level.
So, yeah, but you make a good point. One of the good things about local government is all those perspectives that come from local communities that gather around the table. It's, ultimately, that's one of the hallmarks, I think, of local government, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
Now, as your mayoral term comes towards an end, I'm not sure if you're planning to put your hand up again, but what does the future for local government look like for you, given you're in your 4th term?
I think it's a different future to what I had thought it would have been, say, 8 years ago. One of the areas that I particularly enjoyed was planning, and the levers that we have at a local council level to ensure, say, neighbourhood amenities, tree canopy coverage. One of the great pieces of work that we did at council was to mandate that when developers are taking down a single dwelling and putting up townhouses, that they must have a canopy tree in the front yard. Now, there is concern amongst many councils, including our own, that our residential codes are being taken away, and those kinds of policies and commitments that we sought from developers are no longer required. So I think council has a really big role to play in how we develop our neighbourhoods, and I would really like to work with the state government on maintaining that role that we have and that input that we have about how our streets look, what the community is saying to us, what they want to see, and how the future of planning evolves with council in the state government's mind as being really informative.
Yes, with the recent planning reforms, the housing announcements, etc., it must be a little bit concerning about the maintenance of the council role in any of those planning related matters.
Yeah. I think we're wanting to work with the state government and for councils and communities' voice to be heard through consultation and planning as the reforms come through, particularly around our activity centres and densification.
We probably have to leave it there. We've covered a lot of ground, talked about a lot of issues. It's been a pleasure to chat with you, and I wish you all the best for what's, I think, is about 2 months left of your mayoral term.
Yes. Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you for all the work that you've been doing in this space. It's great to have this forum and look back over other mayors and people you've spoken to as well.
Excellent, kind of you to say. Thank you very much for coming on. Councillor Helen Davidson, the Mayor of Merri-bek City Council. All the best.
Thank you.
My next guest on VLGA Connect is the fairly brand new CEO of Golden Plains Shire Council. It's great to have Adam McSwain on the show. Hello, Adam. Welcome.
Hi, Chris. Yeah, thank you, and thanks for having me on.
Good to have you here. Nice to meet you. How are you settling in? It's been 4 or 5 weeks, I understand.
Yes. So, it's been great. I was at Hume City Council before Golden Plains. Did the, as Sheena, the CEO at Hume, said to me, perhaps silly thing of straight away starting. Finished at Hume on a Friday, moved house to Geelong on Saturday,
Wow.
and started at Golden Plains on the Monday. So it was straight into it. But yeah, it's been great. Really great, team of staff, great municipality. Lots of small towns, and of course Bannockburn and Smythesdale and a few areas with a bit of growth, and obviously working in really closely with the councillors.
Yeah, so literally you're just up the road from me as we record this. I'm at Lara, which is in Major Geelong, so I could almost see you on a clear day, perhaps. We'll talk about what your plans are and how things are going to be travelling at Golden Plains in a moment. I want to talk a bit about you and your career path, how you come to be the CEO at Golden Plains. You're not a new CEO in that respect, are you? You've had a general manager role, the equivalent in New South Wales at Edward River some time back.
Yes, yeah. I took an opportunity. So, of course, in New South Wales a number of years ago now, there were the mergers. They did some mergers of councils. So just across the river, there used to be a Deniliquin council in Conago. So yeah, they then formed Edward River. So about 6 months after they'd sort of merged, I took the role there as general manager or CEO. And yeah, absolutely loved it. Clearly one of the most challenging roles I've ever done, leading 2 organisations into one and new org structure and all of those kind of things. But yeah, really, really enjoyed it. Lots of great people and a beautiful part of New South Wales there on the Edward River. So yeah, enjoyed that sort of first step into a CEO role.
As you take on the CEO role at Golden Plains, different environment, different council, different state, obviously, different jurisdictions. There are some differences. Is there anything about how you approach the role at Edward River that you bring with you that you think this time around I'm going to do that differently?
Good question. No, probably more things I think I learned that probably reflecting on trying to do the same. I think when I went into Edward River, it was a merged council. Like I say, I had an administrator at the time, and always really mindful with councillors, particularly just that utmost, transparency, investing so much time in building relationships, having that really strong connection between councillors and the organisation. And I think they were things I invested a lot in at Edward River and proved successful. So yeah, certainly in my first 4 or 5 weeks here at Golden Plains, we've been really trying to sort of, invest and kind of focus on that. I think maybe the other learning I took, of course, when you first step into a CEO role, you want to be in and across absolutely everything. And I think I certainly tried to do that at Edward River. But pretty quickly learned, of course, you can't. It's about the team and directors and managers and supporting everyone. So I think I learned a lot there. That's probably the one thing trying to do a bit different here is, yes, get involved with lots of energy, but of course also, trusting the team and supporting people to do good work.
Looking at your background, you've worked at a few councils now in nearly 2 decades in the sector, some small rurals and some big city councils such as Bayside and Hume, big by comparison to those others. Was it always part of the plan to end up back at I know Golden Plains is peri-urban, but it's, largely rural as well, to be back in an environment like that?
I wouldn't say necessarily always the plan per se. I didn't sort of have a directly set out plan outside of, I guess, being keen to be CEO again.
Yeah.
But probably is a reflection that, I've always really enjoyed, I certainly enjoyed working at metro councils, but I've always really enjoyed that, that connection you have with the community at rural and regional councils. And whilst, of course, the size of budgets and some of the funding constraints are a little bit different, I've always found at kind of some of those smaller councils, the ability to think a bit differently, innovation, try new things. I think there's great capacity to do that at smaller councils because you kind of have to. So that's something that I'm really looking forward to sort of bringing to Golden Plains.
That was going to be one of my questions. You would appreciate the challenges of a resource constrained environment in a smaller council, becoming more and more so, obviously, as we get further and further away from the introduction of rate capping. How does that influence or shape the way you approach this role as CEO?
I would say that would certainly be when I started working at Hepburnshire back when I first worked at councils, and coming into Golden Plains can see clearly that funding and financial situations have changed fairly significantly. I think it definitely has been shaping my initial 5 or 6 weeks at Golden Plains. I know from all of my discussions with staff and with councillors, it is kind of front of mind for everyone, that financial sustainability is something that we really need to work on. So for me, it's trying to always link it with positivity and glass half full. And yes, we have funding constraints, but even at Golden Plains, we still have a $60-70 million budget. So let's think about how we can do the best for our community with what we have, and not necessarily focus too much on what we don't. Because having worked at obviously Hume, probably 10 times the size, you still have a lot of the same challenges. You clearly have more staff and maybe capacity to deal with some of them, but still, certainly at smaller councils, I still think you can do some amazing things.
Yeah. It's been an interesting time at Golden Plains in recent months. That was acknowledged by your mayor when he made your announcement saying that, they'd had some challenges in the first 6 months of the council term, some interims there. Is that something that gives you pause or actually presents to you as a challenge going into a role like this?
Yeah, I am very much on the presents as a challenge and opportunity kind of focus of things.
Yeah.
I very much looked at it, and of course went through the interview process with councillors. But as a great opportunity to come in as a relatively new CEO, work with a good group of councillors, and sort of build some stability, and hopefully take Golden Plains from where it was and is, and still lots of things we do really well, but sort of on that next trajectory to some of our current opportunities around growth and just changing financial circumstances.
Yeah. What's the approach you take to the organisational elements of your role when the organisation's been in a bit of flux for some time? You've had some interims. There must be some trepidation, I guess, another change of leadership. How do you approach that with staff particularly?
Yeah, so been trying to do that with being present. So a lot of time, been catching up obviously with, directors, managers. I'm now doing a round of catch-ups with sort of all coordinators across the organisation. I've been out at the depots, kinders. So trying to have that very much, being present, out and about, talking with people, just understanding and connecting. But yeah, I've obviously had a few questions from people saying, "You're going to stay, aren't you?" And it's like, yes, that's definitely the plan. So yeah, I think it's just about supporting people, and I think reinforcing that. I've found at every council that regardless of challenges, when you actually look at the work people are doing day to day and the outputs, it's amazing how resilient people are and the amount of work they're still doing. Like at Golden Plains, we've still had upticks in, planning permit approvals and reducing timelines. We've had improvements in community satisfaction around roads. So there's still so much great work that we're doing. So reinforcing some of that as well.
Where do you think your priorities are going to be in terms of your focus for the next 12, 18 months or so?
Yeah. So certainly financial sustainability. That's that will very much be one of the key items. Our long-term financial plan shows us sort of in the outer years getting back into a more positive position. But I think probably working with councillors to look at how we could do that a bit sooner will certainly be something we'll be doing some work on. For us in Golden Plains, as you mentioned, a peri-urban council, and particularly around Bannockburn, there's quite a bit of growth. We're currently working with the VPA on the Bannockburn South, a precinct structure plan that will go to a planning panel in a few weeks' time. So for us as an organisation, that's also a big change. Much more working with developers, developer contributions, and then linking back to financial sustainability. How do we fund our portion of the community infrastructure and all of the things that will be required from that? So they're probably two of some of the key priorities initially.
On my other podcast, the Local Government News Roundup this week, I spoke with Moira Berry at Moorabool in her capacity as the Peri-urban Council's chair. She was telling us about these growth challenges that councils like yours are facing and the need for more state and federal investment in livability, in infrastructure. Is this alliance approach something that sits well with you? Have you had much exposure to that before?
So really peri-urban, getting familiar, and I think actually have sort of first board meeting and a few things with that in the coming weeks. But yeah, certainly previously at Hume, we were part of northern councils, and of course back when I was in New South Wales, Riverina and Murray sort of joint organisation, which was also a group that sort of worked quite closely together to achieve some pretty good outcomes. So yeah, I think peri-urban councils is a great opportunity for Golden Plains. We've been and will continue to be quite active working with that group to advocate for the needs of all of our municipalities.
Yes. And what does Adam McSwain do when he's not the CEO at Golden Plains to keep sane and have balance?
So married, I've got 2 young kids, 4 and 2, or soon to be 5 and 3. So
that'll keep you busy.
That keeps me busy.
Yeah.
And then a fair bit of like running, physical fitness, bit of gym, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of the go-to.
That healthy life balance is something that you promote too from an organisational sense to people?
I think I'm getting far better at it.
Yeah.
Certainly far better now, particularly since having young kids. That has definitely made me much better at leaving at 5:15 and all those kind of things. But yeah, I think at Golden Plains, we do have straight away could pick up on that great culture where it's a great place to work and people really enjoy that integration we have with the community, but also knowing you can switch off and still have a life outside work, which is definitely what we want to promote.
Absolutely. Terrific. Adam, great to meet you. All the best with your role there at Golden Plains. I hope it's a long and fruitful relationship for you and for the council there. And thank you very much for coming on VLGA Connect to tell us about it.
No worries at all. Thank you very much for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thank you to Adam McSwain. Thank you to Councillor Helen Davidson at Merri-bek, my guests today on VLGA Connect. Good to catch up with both of those folks. And we'll have more for you next week when another edition of VLGA Connect comes your way with local leaders and decision makers from around the state and more of the news that's happening across the local government sector. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or on your podcast player to make sure you don't miss an episode. And look out also for the Local Government News Roundup on podcast every Monday, Wednesday and Friday, brought to you by the VLGA, where you can keep your finger on the pulse of news, not just from Victoria, but Australia-wide and beyond. Until next time on VLGA Connect, thanks for your company. We'll see you soon.